Welcome to the Higher Self Podcast. The purpose of this podcast is to help you unravel anything keeping you from a life of true abundance, joy, and happiness, which is your birthright. Each week, we'll bring in different guests specifically tailored to help you on your journey to discovering your higher self. Whether it's spirituality, business, finances, health, or relationships, there are no topics that are off limits. So get ready and enjoy this week's episode of The Higher Self. Welcome to this week's episode of The Higher Self. If you've ever wanted to really unravel the truth of who you are and set yourself free, you know, whatever free looks like or feels like to you, even if you don't know what that looks like or feels like yet, but you know that there's something inside of you that wants to be unleashed. I think this is going to be the episode for you. I've got with me Luke Storey. Luke, how are you?
I'm great, man. Thank you.
I'm glad you're here, man.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm here too.
I love that I asked you, what are you passionate about? And you said, I'm passionate about helping people find the truth and setting them free. And I said, oh, well, this is going to be a good episode because that's what I'm passionate about.
What else is there?
What else is there?
You know,
absolutely.
All the things we chase in life, whether unknowingly or not, we believe are going to lead us to that point. So
yeah,
maybe we can find shortcuts.
Yeah. I was going to say, what else is there? Well, there's chasing the one, there's the NFL, there's, Mercedes-Benz. There's, red bottom shoes. There's
red bottom shoes.
Louis Vuitton purses.
You're bringing me back to my former career. It's funny. I haven't heard that in a long time. I used to live in Hollywood and work in the fashion industry for a long time. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Tell me about that. What was that like?
Well, going way back, when I was 19, I moved to Hollywood, and I was a musician, and so I wanted to be a rock star and do all those things that you think Hollywood can bring you to get to know who I was, ultimately. And I got deeply into drugs and, all kinds of nefarious activities there. And when I was 27, I got sober. Actually, 26. Yeah, 26. And I'm 52 now, so it's been a long time. And I just...
You look great, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate
you
it,
look
man.
Great, yeah.
A lot of good living between then and now. But anyway, long story short is I had a lucky break and I got hired by Aerosmith as a wardrobe assistant. So helping them with their tours and concerts and stuff like that. And that led to a 17-year career as a fashion stylist. So for those that don't know what that is, I would dress celebrities and musicians and stuff like this for various projects and photo shoots and videos and things like that. So that's what it was. How it was fun and creative, and it beat the hell out of being a waiter or dealing drugs, which are my former two career paths. And so I met a lot of really interesting creative people and worked with some brilliant artists, photographers, musicians, directors, and people of that nature. But it was also extremely stressful, and working within, just the hours and the expectations and things like that. And essentially you're driving around, in my case, and because I was in LA, and LA traffic for 12 hours a day.
That is, it's funny you bring that up, and maybe we can talk about this, but dealing with LA traffic I remember when I would drive into LA and I thought, this was back when I was like conscious, right? I would still think, I don't know why humans choose to deal with this because this is nuts.
Yeah. Well, I eventually moved,
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a fun career, and it also provided me a lot of other opportunities and relationships with people that I probably would have never met. But I'm relieved to be out of it and to have found my calling. There's a certain degree of superficiality and phoniness and just people playing a lot of false roles in the entertainment industry, right? Not just on camera, but behind the camera. So to get through to real people behind their roles was difficult, but it availed me a lot of other opportunities, and I got, what I could get out of it and gave what I could give. And I'm grateful for the experience, but yeah, it seems like another lifetime. That's why I laughed so hard. You said red bottom shoes. I'm so far removed from that life.
Sure.
I live in such a different universe now, it feels like I've had many lives in one, and that was one of them.
Beautiful. And what got you into a space where, you obviously started the healing process? I could see it in your, and for those of you that are not aware, once you start the journey of, disconnecting from the system, healing, becoming more conscious, healing some of your trauma, it shows in so many ways. Like, Luke, I feel it in your energy. I feel it in your calmness, in your presence, in your groundedness. And I see it in your skin, you know, I see it in your eyes. And I'm saying this to all of you because so often we get used to living in the environments and the communities and the energy that we live in, and our bodies become used to stress.
Yeah, it's addictive.
It really is addictive. And the responsiveness and the grind and the push and the struggle and the fight. And as a result, we don't realize this, but we take that energy into our relationships. And this is why we have a very difficult time opening our hearts with our partners, is that the way you are in life is the way you are at home, and the way you are at home is the way you are in life.
Yeah.
So if you're fighting and struggling and, you know, confronting and arguing in your relationship, it's a symbolism for how you are in life. And then guess what? You are going to attract the neighborhood, the state, the people, the job, you know, the money that causes you the lack of freedom or the struggle that you internally feel you're worthy of.
Yeah,
You
so
know?
true. There's so much subconscious programming that goes on, you know, thinking about relationships. There's a stage in, you know, the spiritual aspirant's development where you start building a healthy relationship with oneself. But you mentioned the trauma, you know, for me, I was meditating and doing a lot of spiritual work, going on pilgrimages to India and doing all the things for a long time. And I still really struggled in relationship. And it was like, I remember having that experience of, you know, why do we keep attracting these unhealthy, dysfunctional people into my life, you know, and looking at them that way, you know, and then over some time, of course, doing some work, it's like, oh, I picked them, right? I looked at that one. It was like, you're the one. It wasn't them. I mean, it's like you said, though, there's a level of consciousness, right, that you carry and that you represent, and you are in alignment and resonate with things in all areas of your life that are on that level of consciousness. But it's also interesting to me in my own experience to observe how in many areas of life, I could be very functional and healthy and living by spiritual principles and living a really pure, clean, God-motivated life. Yet there would be other categories of my life, like for me, it was finances and relationships, that would be abnormally dysfunctional and not proportionate to the other areas of my life in which I was of service and, you know, really spiritually committed and healing my body and doing all of this emotional work and therapy and all that. So it is really interesting that parts of your life can fall out of the integration of growth unless you become aware of them. And for me, I usually become aware of things when they really hit a point of failure, you know, and then I kind of go, okay, I got to stop and really be honest with myself here and take responsibility for why I'm inviting these circumstances into my life, you know. Yeah.
And so much just came up that I want to like dive into. Number one, you said you went to India and you obviously started the journey, right? So I want to know about that, right? And then number two, you mentioned, you know, living a spiritual life and a God-centered life. And I'd love to know, because, you know, us as human beings, we are programmed to believe that this thing, God, is like, you know, this thing, right? This thing that
this thing out there.
Well, it's interesting that we put in this box, right? Yeah. And it has to fit this little paradigm, right? Yeah. And when it doesn't fit in this paradigm and you don't believe the paradigm that I believe, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Because you have to be wrong. Because if you're not wrong, well, then there's something wrong with my paradigm that I have created. And when you open up that box, get ready.
Well, that's the difference between an egoic intellectual attachment to a belief versus an inner faith. Because an inner faith is expansive and inclusive. And I don't, you know, I'm sure in the beginning I didn't look at it this way, but as you speak about the concept of God being compartmentalized or even having any sort of identity, right?
Right.
It's like the way that I experience my life now and my relationship with God is that there's actually nothing but that. That's all there is. So this microphone, me, Casper, you, this house, this city, this state, this country, this continent, on infinitum, right, is just all single expressions of consciousness, we could use that word too, of God expressing itself, and even the things that we perceive to be evil, right? Because this consciousness has created a system in which there's duality, so that we have a spectrum of experience, so that we can choose through our free will. And free will is kind of debatable, right? Because the free will was created by God itself, right? But we have the opportunity when we're born to start somewhat fresh. I mean, leaving aside any karmic implications, right, of things that we brought from past lifetimes and experiences, but we have the experience here that seems fresh, at least. And for me, it's been about systematically removing anything in my emotional body, psyche, experience, the way I think, the way I feel, that separates me from having that expansive experience of God and having a direct, faithful relationship. So in my case, I was lucky, I think, to have no experience of religion or anything like that as a kid.
Oh, never?
No, I mean, my family weren't atheists, but they were just maybe agnostic, just neutral. It just wasn't a topic. It wasn't something in my family history that I'm aware of. So luckily, for me, hitting a bottom with drugs the way that I did, I was quickly educated in the fact that I wasn't going to be able to solve my own problem, which had become evident to me through my own failed efforts.
Yeah.
And so I went in the route of going to treatment and the 12 steps. And what was beautiful about that, especially in my case, is that I didn't have any prior belief system or indoctrination or negative experiences at Catholic school or anything like that to work through. It was just like, well, the God thing seems like a pretty long shot to me. It's like, really?
Yeah.
God? I remember going into treatment and they're like, yeah, you have to start praying. And I'm like, can you give me some medication? How about that? And it was like, no, this is based on the 12 steps and it's based on prayer, and a higher power is the only thing that can save you, And luckily, I was so beaten down that I actually was really humble and teachable, and I was so desperate, So this idea that was introduced to me was out of the 12 steps, and it's a God of your understanding. So they weren't like, you have to believe in a him or an it or a her, nothing religious whatsoever. It's just there are fundamental and universal truths that exist universally for all of us on the planet. And if you learn what they are and how to apply them to your life as a way of life, to actually live by principles like honesty, service, humility, prayer, meditation, taking personal inventory, making amends when you've harmed someone, just basic fundamental stuff that anyone who's just kind of a moral person would have some understanding of. But I was so immoral and so hurt and so backwards and just confused. This was all novel to me, and that was my access point to coming to understand that I could have a relationship with my own personal version of a higher power. And at first, it was kind of a thing over there. Oh, I'm going to go pray, and it was a special time I would set aside to pray in the morning or meditate, right? And then over the years, as my understanding has evolved, it's become something more what I just described, that there's nothing that's not that. So I don't search for God. I just try to stay aware of the things in my behavior and my thoughts that are keeping me from having the experience of that reality that's already here, right?
Gotcha.
It's like the sun. It's a cloudy day in Austin right now, right? Which I can't stand when it's like this. I love sun. It's probably why I stayed in LA traffic for 32 years. I was like, I don't want to leave that sun. But it would appear if you walk outside today that the sun's gone, right? Let's call the sun God. The sun is just as bright up there behind those clouds as it is on the brightest sunny day, right? So my job is to identify those clouds in my experience and to systematically remove them. And a lot of what I do in my life and what I share with other people is tools for identifying those clouds, those blocks, and removing them. And those are things that we're kind of born with because we have instincts, right? We have an intellect, we have an ego, we have all of these rightful instincts that help us stay in our body and keep that body alive. But ironically, those are the things that often prevent us from having the experience of the divine. And so
that was wonderful, Luke.
We're in kind of a pickle here, right? Yeah. Because we're in an animal body, but we're a spiritual being in a spiritual world that's also material. And if it's all God, then, how do we stay in the lane of joy and freedom and of love? And the only way to do that is to remove the things that are preventing us from having that experience.
And
And I didn't forget about your India question, by the way. I can go back to that in any time.
We will, but because I love all of what you said, and especially that image of the sun and the clouds. Like that to me was like, oh, that's really good.
I borrowed that one from David Hawkins.
David Hawkins?
Yeah.
Well, of course.
Dr. David Hawkins
is, by the way, you want to change your life, go pick up David Hawkins.
That guy's just, oh my God.
That is just,
I used to go see him speak in Sedona, where he was located before he died. And for those listening, his most famous book is called Power versus Force.
Power versus Force.
Which is great, but I found that one, I mean, that was my intro to him, but his other work to me is much more
Letting
meaningful.
Go.
Letting Go is great.
Yeah, Letting Go is,
Yeah. So, I used to go see him, and still, I mean, this is, God, going back to the mid-2000s maybe. And I still listen to his audiobooks and lectures all the time. And, I take a break, right? Because I get inundated with it. Then I go back and it never fails. I'm like, holy shit.
There's something more. Yeah.
It's just, he's one of those teachers that I've never outgrown. There's been a lot of great teachers along the way. And at their level of understanding, to me might have been, I remember when I first heard Eckhart Tolle, it was just,
you know what's crazy? I was just thinking Eckhart Tolle as well.
I mean, I'm like, oh my God, you're not your mind? What? I mean, some of those concepts were just so life-changing and so powerful. And they still are, not to discredit him or paint myself as someone who's like evolved past Eckhart Tolle, but I don't listen to his tapes anymore, for example, because I feel like I got an understanding of that to the point that I was saturated, and then I just kind of went on to something else. But David Hawkins...
David Hawkins is like...
I mean, he was just so tapped in and such a brilliant mind, and also came from the world of academia, right? He was a psychiatrist for 50 years. So he really had a deep understanding of the human psyche, but also had tremendous spiritual gifts and insights, right? So it's kind of the perfect package deal of someone who can take you as far as you want to go with the intellect, but also much further with his understanding of the levels of consciousness and of our spiritual nature.
As you said that, I remember I was walking in the beach in Colombia. I had taken a trip.
That's where my little brother lives.
Where at?
In Medellin.
In Medellin?
Yeah.
I mean, is he single? Or?
No, he met someone there.
Oh, okay, I was about to say, because if you're like if you're a single guy, that's where everybody goes.
That's why he went there.
Is Medellin.
He wanted to find a wife, and he did. She's lovely. Yeah,
that's wonderful. Yeah. So, I remember walking in the beach of Colombia. It was a trip that changed my life. I went by myself, and I went with just a backpack. And, this is me. This is, Danny Morel, the guy that brings all the suitcases and, so forth and so on. And I said, no, man, I'm just going to pack a couple of t-shirts, a couple pair of pants. And, my ego didn't like that because, what if I meet somebody? What if I go to a nice dinner? I was like, I don't know. I'll figure it out. But this is about me reconnecting with, Latin America. And I had a beautiful experience.
Where are your people from?
Ecuador.
Oh, okay.
And Dominican Republic.
Oh, cool.
But the lineage of Dominican Republic actually comes from Spain, because they came in and conquered, and that's a whole other story. But anyhow, I remember two things. Number one, I remember having this moment where I climbed up to the top of the mountain on a horseback, and as I stood over there and I looked over what's called El Valle del Cocora, which if you've never been, you have to go. It's the most beautiful, beautiful place. And I'm overlooking this, and I literally felt my ancestors reconnect with me. Like I felt them, and I do this because I felt them. The masculine lineage on the right, and the feminine on the left, and I just start like crying and weeping, because I was like, wow, it was like a homecoming moment for me. But the second thing that I remember is that I was in the northern part of the country. I was walking on this beach. And I'm listening to David Hawkins, and I'm listening to The Power of Letting Go, and I'm listening to the scale of consciousness. Yeah. And I'm hearing about enlightenment.
Yeah, and you're like, I'm at 700 right now.
Well, yeah, but it gets further. It gets further because I was like being honest with myself. I'm like, where am I right now? Yeah. And I thought I was much further than I really was now looking back. But I remember getting to where he spoke about enlightenment and having an ego death moment, like a scary moment. Like, and for those of you listening, it's like you get to a space, and I'm sure you understand what I'm saying, but you get to a space where you go, oh my God, you mean everything that I'm afraid of, everything that I doubt, everything that I worry about, everything that holds me back can be gone someday? and literally you go, that's a lot to handle because you're so used to it.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the power of David Hawkins' work.
Yeah.
He gets you there.
Yeah, and also lays out a map, right? So that you can sort of assess where you are without judgment too, right? I mean, like I said, there were times in my life where I was reaching higher levels of consciousness and understanding and just as a result, happiness, right? Yet there were areas of my life that were out of balance.
Right.
And so with work like that and other teachers, if one cares to be honest with themselves and take some time in reflection and self-inquiry, you can see like, wow, okay, over here, I'm making some progress. Over here, not so much, right? And then it's about just putting in some time and effort into those areas in which we're behind. And right now in my life, I feel really good in all the areas. You know, I'm making good progress, and I have a goal. I have a standard set for myself, which is complete self-realization. And so what keeps me interested in the game is acknowledging, hopefully humbly, the progress that's been made and understanding a lot of that progress is up to grace.
Sure.
And some of it to my own efforts, right?
Sure.
And just patting myself on the back and going, holy shit, man, you've been through a lot. You're doing great, man. Look where you were 10 years ago. I mean, if I look where I was 25 years ago, especially before I got sober, I mean, I was a fucking street urchin. I was so depraved. And so that's high contrast, but even going back 2 years ago, it's great. I think it's a great practice to look and go, wow, how am I doing? And then if there's areas that need work, then I start to focus my efforts on that. You know, how can I be a better husband? How can I be more emotionally available? How can I deepen into intimacy and trust and healthy love? You know, those are the things over the past 3 years that I've been in a great relationship, you know, that those things have unfolded, but it took me being in the right place in order to bring in someone into my life that was also there, maybe even further in my case, and capable of going as far as we can in that sort of area of our growth and evolution. You know? And so the Hawkins work to me has been so instrumental because when I take an evaluation of where I am, I do my best to do so without judgment. There's a huge difference between observation and judgment, right? I can look at your crystal over there and go, wow, that's a pretty big crystal. Or I could look at that and go, why does he think he needs a big crystal? You see what I mean? Or whatever. I mean, you do it with anything, you know.
And I would have never thought, why would anybody think that I would think that I need a big crystal?
That wasn't a great example. Let me see.
No, but this is perfect because it's like, it also leads us to the point of like, you never know. So like for me, I just to share with you the story and all of you capture this moment. Like thank you. Capture this moment, right? Because, you know, something like a crystal could cause judgment or could cause like whatever, right? And honest to God, I found this, I was walking in a crystal shop in Laguna Beach, in Malibu, and it struck me because I love the vein. And I had never seen this vein before. Right?
Oh, cool.
And it looks like 2 lungs.
Oh, wow.
Which my mom died of lung cancer.
Whoa.
So that looked like the little, right.
So,
and then it also looks, you know,
like in the process of growing up, right?
Which is
to me, I mean, I'm a
symbol.
52-year-old and I love my
if my mom would not
nature.
have
I try to
died
never
of
be
lung
serious.
cancer,
If I'm
my
serious,
transformation journey would have never began.
Wow.
So to me, this is like,
that's powerful.
It's epic. It's
so
just,
great.
But you would never know that.
That's so great.
You would never know that.
That's
you
great.
Know?
Yeah. So you know, in the process of growing up, right, which to me, I mean, I'm a 52-year-old and I love my childlike, playful nature. I mean, I try to never be serious. If I'm serious, you know, I'm drifting into ego. I mean, there's a time for reverence, right? And not everything is funny. And there's moments in which you need to have a bit more, you know, restraint and whatnot. But I mean, just generally not taking myself or the human experience too seriously. But when I look at my progress, and I evaluate where I am without judgment, in other words, without criticizing myself. Say I did something that was just disingenuous or mean or something like that, right? Which is not how I want to behave. Rather than going, oh my God, you're such a failure, what a loser. You think you're spiritual? Really? That you just flipped off a guy on the freeway or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
Or
Judge Danny's crystal. By the way.
Yeah.
Just like
right? But and we could do this with other people too, because as harshly as we judge ourselves, we're also, like you said, who we are in life is who we are in our relationship, right? So if I'm this way over here, well, I'm that way everywhere. And I just have to accept that that's part of my inherent character, right? But let's just say I catch myself doing something that I'm not proud of. It's such a beautiful practice to just observe that with love, with unconditional love for myself, and say, wow, we could do better. It's all right. Let's be honest about what we did or how we're feeling or thinking about this thing, right? And know that there's a higher level of elevation from which we can perform. And then to me, that keeps me in the game. It keeps me fun because I was stuck so long in the shame spiral of spiritual perfectionism. It's like getting this pious attitude of myself. Speaking of going to India, I go to India and it's like, I'm learning these advanced meditation techniques and these healing techniques and all this stuff. I start wearing the beads, and I come back home. I mean, it's a beautiful experience, but looking back, it's hilarious. I was doing my best, bro.
Bro, I've been there.
But I came back, and I had a mentor at the time, and I came back, and I don't think his behavior was really warranted, but he basically just banished me because he couldn't stand being around this fake egoic spiritual identity that I built. I basically went over there and my ego, really not really mine, just sitting in the background going, oh, we can be spiritual guy now, and that's how we'll get our validation. That's how we'll get our approval, right? So I start wearing the mala beads and doing the namaste hands, and I came back, and my mentor at the time was like a redneck from Louisiana, biker, Vietnam vet. Like, he didn't play, he was not a soft guy. He wasn't like Ram Dass, what I'm saying?
Right.
But he had deep wisdom, at least for me at that time, that was very helpful, despite some of his many flaws. But he came back, and it was really hurtful that he treated me like that. But in hindsight, I look back, and I don't think his methods were the most loving, but he made a point, man. And his point was, dude, you have to watch ego, because it will take anything that you think you are, and it will identify and build a persona out of that.
Yeah.
And that's what happened to me when I went to India, right? So it's like having some experiences like that and seeing all of the ingenuity of the psyche and of the persona of the ego, all of these structures that it clings to, wanting to be a you, like wanting me to be a somebody, a Luke that people see in this way or that way, And so again, going back to the clouds, it's like each time I see one of those levels of falsehood, I have an opportunity in a non-judgmental, just self-loving way to discard that and actually love the real person who's wanting to emerge, the soul within the body here that doesn't need any of that accoutrement in order to derive its sense of value or worth. It's just, I can just sit here with you, Danny, and just hang and just be the best version of Luke and really do my best in the moment to be in that witness, observer awareness and just be fucking real.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Just be authentic.
But that's the hardest thing for
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But in order to be authentic, I have to be aware of all the areas and all the ways in which I have previously been inauthentic, right? Like I have to be able to see my phoniness come out. And it's great doing podcasts and stuff because you're on camera. I mean, it's really good practice to learn how to just be authentic and present. But I'm still aware there's another part of me that's like, Luke, you don't need to impress anyone. You're okay just like you are. It's okay if you stutter, if you're not articulate. If you sound dumb, you get stuck. You got to put a nicotine thing in, and people are wondering what you're doing, and they're judging you because you use nicotine, whatever, right?
Oh, is that what you did?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even.
Yeah, so it's my last little addiction. Yeah, I really.
It's what you're holding on.
I really enjoy it. Yeah, it's a fucking long story there.
Yeah.
But going back to that, it's a great example, right? A couple months ago, I was in a medicine journey, and I was just looking at my life and myself and how far I've come. And I saw, Luke, you're still using this one thing. You're not there yet, man. Like you still got this crutch. Why do you need that? You don't need that. What would it be like if you were really sober? Because I work with plant medicines and things like that, but I don't use drugs that were formerly destructive to my life and that I was addicted to, alcohol and heroin and all that. And I was like, Luke, what would it be like if you were really sober? If you were present, like you're present now, you're getting there, but you still like pop your nicotine in to like take it to the next level, So I quit, and I was insane for those 2 months. I had so much anxiety. It was part of my integration too. I was working through some stuff. It wasn't just that, but it was a great lesson in spiritual perfectionism.
I want to
right?
touch on that.
And so the end of the story was one day I thought, you know what? I've given it a couple months and I know that I can do it, but I really don't feel comfortable. And the spirit of tobacco is very grounding for me.
Good for you, man.
And I'm just going to accept that at this moment in my life, living in Texas, 52, married, working on having a kid, it serves me.
It serves you.
It serves me
Good
more.
for you.
It serves me more than
it not being.
more
right.
than there's more benefit than deficit. And to any addict, I know I'm aware of this. That could sound like a really great justification. I mean, I could say, well, I really smoking crack's really helping me get through some tough times, so I'm just going to keep doing it.
Yeah, no, but there's grace. There's grace because you're aware.
Yeah,
you're
so
aware.
that's one of those examples of just being mindful of that perfectionism and just allowing myself to have my process with an awareness. Okay, yeah, I do keep this thing in my pocket. I feel like I need it all the time, right? To feel really comfortable. And what's actually wrong with that? Maybe that's okay because it doesn't hurt me or my relationships, my career, my friends. It doesn't really have any negative consequences other than what my mind tells me about it, which is you should be more spiritual than this. You shouldn't need this.
Because you have it, you're not, or whatever.
Yeah.
I want to.
So it's fun. I mean, to me, Danny, this is what makes life interesting. Being on a spiritual path is that there's so much nuance to it, and there's so many things that will come in and out of my experience or my awareness that are the grist for the mill that take me to a deeper level of understanding, right? So out of being, I guess, technically addicted to nicotine, trying to quit it, realizing I'm not happy quitting it, that uncovered spiritual perfectionism for me, which is this thing like, oh, I have to do everything right all the time because I've made it this far and I want to keep going and I want other people to see me as this or that. So it's like, what a gift that nicotine is to me to be able to show me another area in which I need to grow that was kind of in the shadows. I didn't know I was like that. I thought I was pretty self-forgiving. Well, no, I'm not. I feel like I need to be a David Hawkins or else I'm not real. I'm not David Hawkins. I'm Luke Storey, and Luke Storey likes the fucking nicotine right now.
And that's okay. And I want to be careful. I want to be careful because, for some people that maybe, are addicted to like smoking or whatever it is. And you're trying
to clarify, I'm talking about these little,
he when we started the show,
snooze.
he put it in his tooth.
Actually, I'm going to put one in right now.
Yeah. Let's show them what it is.
But I quit smoking cigarettes, I don't know, 12 years ago or something like that. I never looked back. That was because that was an addiction that had really dire consequences.
Sure.
I mean, it made me smelly, it hurt my lungs, all the toxins in cigarettes. So, I'm not advocating for that. But if I did decide to smoke, then, I would have another, I hope I don't, but if I had that happen, I'd have another opportunity to go like, Luke, maybe this is what you need to do right now. And
I don't know about that one, man. That's I don't know about that one because that's your lungs.
Well, I don't either. I'm not saying I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, well, here's the thing with addictions. I think this is what I'm trying to get at in a long-winded sort of way. When I was addicted to drugs and alcohol, part of the destructive nature of those addictions is the inherent shame on the backside of using, right? So maybe today I'm clean, right? I mean, back in the day, okay, today I'm just going to drink, right? Like everyone drinks, even though I was an alcoholic and shouldn't be drinking. Let's just say, okay, I'm going to drink today. And then I'd drink and then I'd start to get a little loose and I'd want something more. And so I'd do some Coke. And then I'd start to feel ashamed because I broke a promise to myself and to my friends and my family that I wasn't going to do Coke. And then that shame made me feel so badly that I had to numb that shame, so I'd go smoke crack.
Wow.
And then I'd feel so ashamed because it's now 8 a.m. and everyone's going to work and the sun's up and I'm still hitting the pipe that I got to go get some heroin. You see what I'm saying? And then, make it to the next night, pass out. The next day I feel so ashamed about the using I did the day before that I have to use again to mask the shame, right? And so this is something I'm acutely aware of because I lived it for 15 years, It's the shame is such a huge underpinning of addiction and it really is part of the vicious cycle. But it's tricky because you can say, well, I don't want to be ashamed, so I'm just going to do what I want. And then you get into the denial, right? And making excuses to keep using. So the addiction conversation is so complex, but that is a huge part of it and something that I'm very aware of. So that's kind of what was going on with that nicotine battle was like, I'm feeling ashamed. I'm feeling embarrassed because my wife is going to know if I start doing it again. And I've shared with her, I did it. I'm 2 months off. Isn't this great? She's super stoked because she wants me to be healthy and all that, right? And so I had to work through the shame and just have a conversation with her and say, hey, listen, I'm feeling a lot of shame here. Like, I want to be perfect. And it's painful to try and be perfect if you're a human being. Because while we're still in a body, that ain't going to happen. David Hawkins smoked cigarettes until the day he died, 2 packs a day.
Wow.
Yeah, he didn't do it on stage, but people that know. Yeah. And I'm not saying that's a good thing, but I mean, that
just blew my mind.
One of the highest spiritual teachers that I've ever been in the presence of in my lifetime, or consume their content, right? And he still had a thing and must have found a way to go like, whatever, there's worse problems to have, right?
I feel like this is a moment for me to share something that most of the audience doesn't know, but this topic of spiritual perfectionism. By the way, I did the beads, I did the hats.
Yeah, it's one of the traps
clothes,
along the way,
But you're not aware of it. But
the combo scars on your arm.
Oh, I've got it all. I've got it all. But what I will say is this: I will say, for me, I'm coming out of a 1.5 to 2 years of veganism, where nobody knows this. I haven't announced this, but where I didn't eat animals, and I didn't eat animals for a couple of reasons. Number one, yes, I do believe that, at least for me, I can't say this for everybody, it did dramatically clear up my energy, my body, and I will say I was receiving downloads and messages direct from source, from love, from angels, whatever you want to call it, practically on a daily and nightly basis. So I was so acutely aware of the spiritual world because I was living in it, basically. I was in the 5D more than I was in the 3D, right? Here's the problem with that I have mentioned before. I didn't sleep for like a year. And I'm talking like I did not sleep. I'm talking, if I got 2 full nights rest in a year, that was a lot.
Oh my God.
It was horrible.
I don't think I would live.
Yeah. No. It was,
I'd
it
off
was rough.
myself, bro. Like if I don't sleep, it's not good. I work very hard on getting lots of good sleep.
Well, it was really rough. And then there's a beautiful side to the story. It's that I was so, in my spiritual perfectionism that I was like, no, you can't eat animals because animals are another being. And how could you be spiritual if you're eating another being? And by the way, if you're a vegan, if you're eating animals, God bless you. We're all on our journey. I'm just sharing mine right now, And I got to the point where I finally realized like there was no groundedness in my energy. Therefore, every night I'd lay there and I'd be gone, Luke. I would literally be in the spirit world. And I didn't realize what was happening to me. But I was getting all these messages and it was just like healing, and I'd be shaking and, right? I'd be releasing and I'd see my mother and I'd see my ancestors and all kinds of crazy things, right? And, my psychic abilities came, all that. But then I wasn't able to sleep because I was out there. And finally I go, something's got to change. And I started thinking like, I really don't want to do this, but I think I need to eat animals again. And I felt so much shame in that, it's a visceral thing for me because I feel like I'm like letting the universe and God down. Right. And then, one of my friends, which you might know, Peggy, you know Peggy? I think everybody around here knows Peggy.
Sure.
God bless you, Peggy. I love you. But I asked her and she said something to me that made sense. She said, I was the same way. And finally I realized that the animals come here in form, knowing that they are going to be sacrificed for our benefit.
And so are we.
And so, yeah, exactly. And
leaving us, sorry to interrupt, just quickly, leaving aside modern practices of funeral homes and burial sites and all that. But if we were just hunter-gatherer people, we would also sacrifice ourselves and become food for fungi, bacteria, insects, and so on.
Sure.
Which is, by the way, how I'm going to go out.
Just straight up in there.
It's called green burial.
Oh, wow.
And just throw me in the backyard.
That's it.
Dig a hole.
That's dope.
Give me back to the earth.
Okay.
That's where I came from.
That's right. I love that.
Why would I go anywhere else? Full of formaldehyde and thousands of dollars of, unnecessary expenses from my family. Actually just we're making a trust right now. And the attorney wanted all the, they want all this information for your will, and she's like, she could tell I'm on a Zoom with her just going, yeah, I want to be put on dry ice for 3 days and just kept in the home. It's like in my will. And then I just want to be buried in the backyard, Yeah. And yeah.
So,
which is, it's just funny that seems strange to people.
No, I get it.
I'm not saying it seems strange to you, but because we've been so indoctrinated into this, it's really, to me, and God bless, like you said, whatever people want to do.
But listen, if you think about it, just look at it.
It's a racket.
And not only that, but the box is blocking you from returning back. Wow, I just saw it.
And it's also horrific for the environment. So if people are environmentalists, all of the chemicals that go into the body go back into the soil and into the groundwater. I mean, it's not my thing.
I just saw
God bless if people.
And you're ruining Mother Earth.
Yeah.
You're hurting Mother Earth.
Yeah. So like on my way out, I don't want to be saying, hey, thank you, Earth, for this life. Here's a bunch of formaldehyde.
Right.
I want to say, hey, take this meat suit and do with it what you will, which is turn it back into soil, and I'll become a tree, and that tree will bear fruit, and someone will eat that fruit, and then someone will eat the animal that ate that fruit, and then they'll die and they'll go back in. It's all cyclical,
Beautiful. Awaken Your Highest Self. We're having one in June and July. That's right. This last event was so transformational for everybody that came that we decided to have 2. And I'm happy to let you know that we're having one June 1st through 3rd here in Austin, Texas, and then one in Palm Springs, California, July 27th, 28th, and 29th. Tickets are officially now on sale. Go to DannyMorel.com/awaken to awaken your highest self now.
But anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt your profound moment with veganism.
No, that's okay. So I started with eating eggs.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you, it's like
that's the gateway drug for ex-vegans: bone broth and egg yolks.
Eggs, yeah. And I started eating eggs, and I did a gut biome check, and I started to realize that like egg yolk is one of my superfoods.
Oh man,
and I'm not kidding you, man. I'm like, oh my God, I feel so good, And then I had like some chicken. And I'm like, my God, I'm like sinning. But I'm like, but there is no sin. You know that, Danny, come on. Yeah. And I just prayed over the animals, and I said, thank you. Yeah. And I started eating a little chicken, and then I started some fish, and then I started eating some chicken, and red meat. I still can't do, and I don't think I will do, but the chicken was just like, and like my muscles and my body just feel so much better. And I'm sleeping again.
Good for you.
And I'm sleeping again. Yeah. And I'll tell you, the other thing is that...
Do you feel more centered in your physical body? I feel
more centered, more grounded, more like, I feel like more here. Like I can do more good here, basically. But the other thing was that I was following this diet where I was fasting 23 hours a day. Mm-hmm. And I would break my fast with like 20 supplements, basically. And so in the back of my mind, I remember one time Aya was in my house, and she literally told me, that's a lot of supplements, isn't it? But I was like, nah, because I'm on my diet. I'm on this thing, right? Yeah. And come to find out that like 6 of the supplements that I had been taking were actually to keep you awake. And I didn't know that. And I know that, but it's perfect though. It's perfect because I needed that space and time where I was able to get all the messages and receive all that I wanted to receive. And I needed to go through it. It's perfect actually. But I wanted to say that in case any of you ever see me at a restaurant, I'm having a piece of chicken and you guys don't freak out, but now like the world knows and it is what it is. And
you're out of the meat closet.
I'm perfectly comfortable now.
Can I ask or just present an idea?
Sure.
Because I, for the same reason, became a vegetarian a long time ago. I mean, almost 20 years ago. For about 10 years, I did that.
Yeah.
As a result, all my teeth rotted and I had all kinds of health problems. So it didn't work for me, but I gave it a good shot. But I couldn't reconcile just the death of an animal. I just thought I'm spiritual now. I'm learning how to become compassionate and loving toward all sentient beings. Like I wasn't a Buddhist, but something like that perspective, right? Cause no harm, do no harm, just period.
Yeah.
Then I realized, unfortunately, 10 years in, I wish I would have realized as soon as you did that I was actually doing harm to myself because for whatever reason, the body that I inhabit requires certain nutrients that I wasn't able to get. But then beyond that, something you said was really interesting to me is that you don't want another living being to suffer or to die so that you can live. And in the last few years, I've come to the awareness that will likely sound insane to some people, that our flora and our plants, trees, plants, are also alive.
And you know, and I would hear that debate and I'd be like, oh, stop. My mind would block it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I get that.
But I just, through my own experience, know this to be true.
Yeah.
And
well, when you're on Aya and you're walking around and you're shaking hands with the plants,
that helps.
You'll realize they're alive.
But beyond that, you know, because I've looked into this a lot and interviewed people about this topic quite in depth on my podcast, The Lifestylist. I just got new teeth. I can't say S's very well yet. New temporary teeth, that is. And that's a whole process. Anyway, it's frustrating because I talk for a living and I'm used to being able to speak a certain way, and now I can't for a while.
It's okay. Let it go.
But I've interviewed a lot of people about this, people that were vegans, people that are vegans, meat eaters, carnivores, hunters, you know, the spectrum of people and what they eat. And maybe more interestingly, trying to dismantle the identification that we build with what's on our plate. I think that's a really fascinating kind of examination of human behavior, that I'm a this or I'm a that. No, I'm not. I'm not a meat eater. I'm not a carnivore. I'm not a vegan. I'm some sort of spiritual being that happens to be cruising around in a body. Yeah. That's what I am. I'm not Luke. I'm not white. I'm not male. I'm not heterosexual. Like those are all distractions from who and what I really am. So there's that. But I've talked to a lot of farmers and things like that, and gotten some factual data on the number of living creatures that are killed in order to produce a certain net calorie value with vegetables, right? So say I have an acre of land, and I'm not using this like to make everyone hate being a vegan or whatever. I really don't care.
No. This is...
But it's an interesting thought experiment, okay? So I have an acre of land and I want to grow a bunch of kale to make kale salads and smoothies, right? The thousands, probably tens of thousands of insects, reptiles, amphibians, birds, gophers, moles. I mean, if you take a tractor to some raw land, okay, to clear it out and make it arable soil to be able to grow vegetables, broccoli, kale, whatever, the number of creatures that you kill, just the number of them, not the size of them, by far exceeds if you threw one cow out into a pasture and just let it free range, the calories that you'd get by killing that one cow. And it's an interesting experiment to me, just of thought and awareness, because human beings have developed an arbitrary hierarchical system that they attribute to the value of a living being based on their perception of it, and often its size, and even more so, how closely it resembles the attributes of another human. So the thought of eating
a gorilla, for example,
the thought of eating a gorilla,
I could never do,
feels way more evil to us than a chicken
or an egg,
right? Yeah,
for example. Yeah.
So I don't know that there's an end to this thing, but it's just something that I ponder a lot, because who says that a grasshopper's life is less valuable than a goat or a cow or an elk or a deer, right? I think it's a healthy practice to start to zoom out and examine the valuations that we impose on practices like this, whether we do it or not.
Sure.
And for me, I would love to live in a world where nothing's eating anything and everything's just left free to roam, including myself, right? Nothing's trying to eat me, because I'll be food. If I went into the wilderness of Alaska, I'm like a steak to a grizzly bear, right? And as I said, when I'm dead and gone and buried in the ground, I'm going to be food for all kinds of different creatures. So I'd love to live in a world where nothing harmed anything at any time. But the fact is, we're here on Earth, and God, creation, consciousness, whatever you want to call it, created the world and the system. We have an ecological system wherein everything is eating everything all the time. As you and I sit here, there are billions of bacteria in and on our body that are eating us for lunch. So are they wrong for eating us? Am I wrong for eating them? So it's like, if I don't want to eat a living thing, then I can't eat kimchi, because I'm eating billions of bacteria in every spoonful. So it just gets to be almost comical to me to have these debates and as I said, the identification that we have. The ego will detach on anything. I'm a this, I'm a that, as a distraction from who and what we really are. And that said, I'll repeat again, I truly support anyone in doing whatever they want to do, And I also am thoroughly disgusted by modern agriculture and factory farms and the ways in which we treat and subjugate and abuse animals.
Yeah.
I mean, I got my dog in the car, as you saw her briefly before I found out you have a big scary dog.
Yeah.
Dude, I can't imagine anyone or anything harming that dog. I love that dog like it's a little baby human, right? Yeah. So I love animals. And if I was starving to death, I don't know that I could eat my dog, you know? But I think that if we open up the conversation around these kind of topics and just be open-minded, like I'm not saying I'm right about anything I'm presenting here. I'm just saying, let's ask questions. Let's have an inquiry.
Yeah.
Let's really just be adult about it and acknowledge that. I think whatever side of the identification with what's on our plate we are, that we can all agree that the least amount of pain and suffering that goes into the production of the food that keeps us alive is good.
Yeah.
Right? I meet so many great regenerative agriculture farmers, right? There's some here in Texas, for example. I've been on the farms. I've been to a bison harvest.
Adrian Grenier, he has a wonderful farm.
Yeah, he has a farm as well. Yeah. And so, you know, I've gone hunting here, not because I want to hunt, but because I want to face the reality of what it means to take an animal's life and eat it. Like, I don't like hunting, but I like being honest with myself, and I like facing the things that I'm afraid of. And I'm afraid of the way that I'll feel if I participate in the death of another living creature, right? And I have that meat in my freezer. I'm like doing my best to eat it. Wild boar is not very tasty, I learned the hard way. But I would much prefer that we evolve as a human society where we can find ways to sustain ourselves that don't harm the planet and cause the least amount of suffering possible. And a really good regenerative agricultural setup, the way they kill those animals is much more humane than an animal in the wild would ever be killed. And the same is true of ethical hunters. Yeah. I mean, if you're a good hunter and you've been mindful about learning how to use your firearm properly before you take a shot at an animal and don't do it in a sloppy way, if you shoot a deer and you get a good kill shot on the first go, even a couple shots, that animal is going to suffer exponentially less than it would at the hands of a pack of coyotes. I mean, it's just, nature is harsh, right? Nature includes life. It also includes death. It includes brutality. It includes violence. Now, our higher beings are capable of evolving, I think, in a way where we can acknowledge that as a fact and also use our consciousness, our awareness to find ways to live and sustain our life without harming animals unnecessarily or the planet unnecessarily.
And each other.
Yeah.
And each other.
Yeah. So that's my, my rant on that whole thing. Because I've been through all of these cycles, man.
I got it, man. I love it.
And I've also helped a lot of people that are really ill, that have been on a plant-based diet for a long time. And they're like, man, this isn't going, women that stop having their cycles. I mean, just all kinds of stuff. And I never tell anyone what to do. I really don't care what people eat. I really could give two shits. But if someone comes to me and asks for help, I'm like, at least get on some bone broth, because that animal is going to die whether you drink bone broth or not.
Right.
That's a byproduct of the beef industry, right? But, I've seen people nurse themselves back to health. But I've also seen people like you that, and like me too, for a period, there was great detox and cleansing that took place.
I needed it.
And also just a lightening, just you said that airy sort of like etheric space that you get into and you get out of the density. But for me, it just wasn't sustainable long term. Sure. I had to just kind of get grounded and accept the harsh reality that on planet Earth, everything's eating everything all the time.
For sure. I love that. How do people get a hold of you?
My cell number is 323. Well, I've got a really fun podcast called The Lifestylist.
The Lifestylist.
The Lifestylist.
I'll say it for you.
My S's, bro. Oh my God, it's funny. Yeah. I've been doing that for about 6 years. We're some 10 million downloads in. It's been really fun. I mean, it's such a gift to be able to do that. And then my website is lukestorey.com, Storey, and Instagram at lukestorey. Yeah.
Beautiful. I love it. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Yeah, it was very deep.
Yeah, fun dropping in with you.
Yeah, for sure.
I never know which way these things are going to go, and it's fun for me to just kind of observe. Like, I don't know, we're going to talk about veganism or whatever.
No, thank you for holding that space for me to just. It was the perfect moment for
me to
man.
Good
come
for
out
you.
of the closet.
Yeah, and you know what I have found over the years of just being more revelatory and just transparent in social media and podcasts and things like that is, man, people love it. They just want realness.
Realness.
That's what they want. They don't care what you eat. It's like, just be honest. Just be real. We're growing out of the phony, contrived legacy media that guys our age grew up on. And now we have the opportunity ourselves as consumers of content and also creators of content to actually drop in on real conversations. Like this conversation you and I had, for me, would have been exactly the same if we were just meeting for the first time and went out to dinner as new friends.
Well, that's what happens all the time, is that I'm like, man, this should be a podcast.
Yeah, same here.
This is good.
Yeah.
People need to hear this.
But my goal with content's always like, let's pretend the mics and cameras aren't here. I mean, let's be respectful of the audience and people's privacy. There's certain things you won't talk about, obviously, but generally speaking, saying, hey man, I'm feeling a bit of guilt because I really felt I needed to eat animals. You're going to free so many people's minds, man, to go, hey, maybe I should look into that. I can't sleep.
Right.
And put two and two together and go, hey, maybe let's try this for a while and see how I feel,
I love that.
Yeah, so thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks for being here.
Yep.
And that's a wrap for this week's episode of The Higher Self. I know that it probably, some points were challenging. They might be rough and they might cause a little unraveling. And if that happens, just sit with yourself and just think and just allow whatever comes up to come up and be okay with that moment of silence with yourself. Because there will be a gift there. There definitely will. We'll see you next week on another edition of The Higher Self. Thanks for watching this week's episode of The Higher Self. If you heard something in this week's episode that caused you to think maybe, just maybe, there was a higher potential for your life, maybe there was a potential to earn and receive financial freedom, to attract the relationship of your dreams, or to improve your health, that's what we specialize in. We help wonderful human beings like yourself to unravel all of the limiting thoughts, feelings, and emotions that you've been living through so that you can finally tap into your life's truest potential. If you'd like to talk more about that, we invite you to join us on Instagram or Facebook and email us the word "discover more." And when my team sees that, they will reach out to you, send you the details of how we could help you on your pathway to a life of abundance, fulfillment, and creating the absolute life of your dreams. Message us right now the words "discover more" now on Instagram or Facebook, and we'll see you soon.